So we're here at ETH Denver 2024 with Gio, a smart contract engineer at Flow Foundation, and Luke, who leads community and marketing.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So, thank you. Can you give me a quick introduction to yourselves, what you do, what Flow Foundation does, maybe a bit about Dapper Labs as well?
Sure. I mean, great way to start off. So for myself, I'm Luke, as you said, and I do the marketing and community side on the Flow Foundation. And now you mentioned yourself how there's Dapper and Flow, and I think a lot of people listening might have only heard of them as kind of one entity, but actually the start of this year we announced they're officially now split into two entities. So there's Flow Foundation, who's a non-profit with a sole mission is to just make the Flow network better, improve the Flow blockchain. It's literally all they do. Not to downplay the work of them, they do a lot of stuff around that, but that's their own focus. And then Dapper Labs has spun off to fully focus on their collectible platforms like NBA Top Shot, NFL All Day and stuff like that. And so both of them are still strong partners who work together, but they are separate entities now, which is behind the scenes kind of how it's been for the last 2-3 years. But as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of like legal sort of T's to cross and I's to dot that we've been doing. And that's like quite a recent announcement. We're really excited. So now we're out here just about Flow. I mean, we can still talk about Dapper all day long because they're the biggest builder on the Flow network, but we're no longer kind of under the same umbrella, which I think is really exciting, and it just makes sense to have a foundation for Flow. And so me, myself, I'm just basically telling the world about that and talking to our community about it. And you?
Yeah, a bit about myself. I've been with Flow for about 1.5 years on the smart contract side. Basically working exclusively, of course, now with Flow Foundation. Yeah, supporting with standards and development of kind of like new and innovative products like Flow EVM.
Yes, and that Flow EVM, which no doubt we'll get to in a bit, is probably the biggest thing we're sort of focused on at large as a foundation. I'll let Gio handle all the technical stuff, but for me, I think it's going to be a bit of a revolutionary moment in the Web3 space because we have in Flow a blockchain that has onboarded hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users to Web3 via platforms like NBA Top Shot, and then you have EVM, which has your sort of OG, diehard, degen, so to speak, of the crypto world that have been here for a minute, and we're about to make that bridge between them, the mainstream users and the OG users, more accessible and easier than ever. And again, I'll let you talk about how it works technically, but from a community point of view, very excited.
Okay, just to jump back in history a bit before we look at the future, can I ask you about, in 2018, there was a workshop here at ETH Denver where the ERC-721 standard was created. What do you guys know about that, and how has it kind of influenced Dapper and Flow and your mission and what you are today?
Such a big influence, it changed everything. It changed everything, not just for Web3, but also for Dapper Labs at large. So ERC-721, when it was sort of published in a paper, Deep Shirley, who was Dapper CTO and now is Flow Foundation co-founder, right? He's moved over as well. He was on the team there as well as others. I don't want to downcredit the work of everyone else, but I use him as an example. He sort of led the charge there, and that paper, fun fact, was the first time that the term NFT was ever used. So not only did it coin the term NFT, it also led to ERC-721 being created, which was then used to build CryptoKitties, which I'm sure many people listening or have heard about or can quickly Google and see that it's one of the first, if not the first NFT, but I don't want to get into that controversy, but one of the first NFT dApps out there, and it was wildly successful. It was so successful that it caused the Ethereum blockchain to have like a surge in demand. Anyone who's about them remembers that back then there was a bunch of people like finance bros like, what are these cats doing? They're blocking up the chain, the gas prices are really high. Because back then the Ethereum community was a lot smaller and it couldn't scale. And even now Ethereum has scalability issues, but back then it was even worse. So gas was just through the roof. Ethereum was basically unusable, And so that obviously caught a lot of headlines. People like, everyone's going nuts for these JPEGs of cats. Like, what's going on? Even if you knew nothing about crypto, you were like, this is interesting, I want to learn about this. And that was kind of the first time that the Dapper Labs team had a mainstream impact at kind of bringing attention to crypto through NFTs. And that triggered everything. That led the Dapper Labs team to say, hey, we need a blockchain that can scale. We don't really like these level 2 solutions. They give up a lot of decentralization. We want to make sure that it's secure, it's decentralized and scalable. They built Flow. And so obviously there's a lot that happened from that day to get to where we are now, but that's me kind of trying to compact it down. And it also led to Dapper Labs reaching out to the NBA and launching the NBA Top Shot platform, which again brought in another wave of collectors in kind of early 2021. So really, when you take it back to that moment, that's why I was smiling when you mentioned it, because when you take it back to that moment, in my opinion, it was kind of the genesis moment for the NFT community. Even if you're on Solana or Polygon or you never touched ERC-721, the amount of influence it had, it can all kind of be traced back to there.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of companies actually that exist today, the major companies such as OpenSea, ZeroX, Figma, they were all in that workshop together, working on ERC-721, and then it's just led to the industry that we have today.
Yeah, and it's crazy you mentioned that, because I love it when I get to meet teams like OX or OpenSea, and I get like meet some of their OG team, maybe the founding team, and they're all friends with like Deet and that, because they were like, yeah, we used to do workshops together. I'm like, oh, you kind of forget, because the space has blown up so quickly. It was only 5 years ago, it was like, what, maybe 10,000 people total in the space, you know what I mean? Maybe like 100 people at an event like this, and now it's like, the room's packed. It's crazy how quickly it's grown, and for me, it makes me think what it's going to be like in another 5 years, you know?
So kind of your critical moment, I suppose, was the NBA Top Shot. People have said that was the moment that launched the last bull market in terms of NFTs anyway. I just want to know, like, how did you cultivate this affinity with mainstream culture, which Flow seems to do better than most?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I think off the bat, the obvious one is working with a big IP like the NBA. When you have a big brand behind you, and we see that more and more in the space now, it's a lot easier to bring in the masses and the mainstream culture, right? But at the same time, it's not just as simple as get a big brand. If that was the case, then we would already have 1 billion users, right? There's plenty of brands in the space now. The other thing that the Dapper team did was Dapper Wallet, which is probably like the second biggest moment, I would say, in terms of onboarding the masses. They made it so you just need an email address and you can register a crypto wallet and you can collect NFTs. And even now, I would challenge your listeners, go and sign up to NBA Top Shot, and within 10 minutes, you'll have an NFT, and tell me if any other platform can be that smooth an experience. And that's kind of what Flow enables. It's instant onboarding, just an email while still being secure. With features like hybrid custody, you can still then get self-custody from that wallet in the future as well. You don't have to worry about like a seed phrase or a random plugin on day one of crypto, you know what I mean? And to me, I think that's how we aligned with the mainstream.
Flow currently is working on EVM equivalence, and I wanted to know a little bit about like what it means to be equivalent with the EVM. I know there are 4 degrees of kind of equivalence. What are you aiming for in terms of that? This is definitely for you.
I'm out.
To bring you
Yeah, no, that's a great question, right? Because the EVM equivalence can mean a number of different things. It's a little bit of a loaded term in the industry, right? You have EVM compatibility, but I can't necessarily port my EVM application over to some EVM compatible chain without making changes to my dApp stack. So what we're shooting for, and what actually has been recently deployed on EVM on PreviewNet, is a full EVM equivalence. I guess the only caveat, like a good reference for everyone, like it would be probably Vitalik has a blog post on like ZK EVMs and different types. We'd be, if you look at that, probably 2.5, right? The fully EVM equivalent application portability. You could deploy your compiled EVM bytecode onto PreviewNet today, like using all of your EVM tooling. Remix IDE, MetaMask, or whatever tools you like to use as an EVM developer. The only consideration, if you even make this in your EVM application, is gas computation. So what we're looking for is full EVM equivalence. You can basically just change an RPC endpoint and deploy it on Flow EVM.
Gotcha, perfect. I was looking for the 2-point scales, 4-point scale, yeah. So how about your new Flow EVM and Cadence? You've got them kind of operating alongside each other, and how are you onboarding people through this ecosystem, and how are the two apps, what are the benefits and trade-offs to begin with between Cadence, Flow EVM? Why are you doing it?
Right, yeah, that's a great question. I guess that last point, like why, I think objectively EVM has like the majority of the surface area and mind share for developers and liquidity in the totality of like the crypto industry. And so obviously the roots going back all the way to digital asset ownership and the through line of user obsession from account linking, hybrid custody that Luke mentioned for like end users, but also developers and having a deep understanding of application developers, going back all the way to CryptoKitties, needing to have a scalable platform for developers to build on so that they can serve end users. We need to meet users, and our users of the platform are developers, exactly where they are, and lower the barrier to entry, because we can preach about how awesome Cadence is as a smart contract language. I know I'm a bit biased as a smart contract engineer working with Cadence, but if we don't lower that barrier to entry, if we don't meet users where they are, they're not necessarily going to build applications, and we won't be able to onboard the mainstream as our big vision. So that's a bit about the why, about the how in terms of how those environments interop. Basically, you could think of Flow as a blockchain that powers the Cadence runtime. Within that, we've embedded EVM as like this EVM equivalent environment. We've been able to do that EVM equivalent in an EVM equivalent manner because we have this like layer that's still on chain above Flow EVM that allows you to orchestrate actions and activities within Flow EVM. So to the rest of the world, if you don't ever want to deal with Cadence, you could just deploy contracts via MetaMask, have your users, submit transactions with their EOAs, no big deal. But if you do want to have like this additive experience to your EVM application, you can do that and orchestrate that all from Cadence. You have batch transactions, you have protocol native account abstraction, you have secure randomness that's available from the Cadence runtime, all of these different features you get without having to compromise the portability that you would have to on like another like EVM compatible platform.
And how much does it cost to deploy it?
Oh man, I would be really surprised if it's not like the cheapest Ethereum platform, EVM platform to build on.
Yeah. From a community standpoint, is this something that you've just been waiting for forever to get?
I'm so glad you said that. Yes, 100%. I mean, the reality is that Flow launched in 2020, but we started a lot of work to do on developing the protocol and building it and making it more secure. And there is still plenty more work to do as well, don't get me wrong. But in the first couple of years, the focus was on making Flow where it needed to be. And we're now at that point, or at least we were as of I would say last summer, if not earlier, where we were ready to start exploring something like this. And it's such a big unlock because kind of as Gio alluded to, Ethereum has the biggest sort of dev ecosystem in Web3, and that's great, and I think it's amazing. And we've always been supporters of that since 2018, as you said yourself, right? And so now we can bring it full circle and say, look, we can bring the users in, you've got the devs, this is just a match made in heaven. I would argue no other platform, other than maybe what Reddit's done, for example, but no other platform has onboarded as many users as deeply into Web3. There's plenty of platforms that have gotten 1 million people to have an NFT, but they've not done anything else. Whereas if you look at some of the most successful projects on ETH, a lot of the founding team started an NBA Top Shot. Started because they signed up to a Flow DApp, were amazed by how easy the technology was, and got the vision. An EVM equivalent on Flow is about to do that again for everyone, in my opinion at least.
So before this interview, we were talking about account linking, is that right? And how it helps onboard mainstream users to Web3, and also serves kind of the needs of people who are already power users in Web3. Can you explain to me how account linking works, or is it account linking? Yes.
Yeah, account linking.
How it works and what it is.
Account linking, I mean, so like you mentioned, Luke, a big factor in the success of NBA Top Shot is that onboarding experience, right? You can onboard with social auth, paying with your US dollar, using your credit card, right? And so that sort of experience is made possible because of an abstraction that was taken on by the Dapper Labs team, where the underlying technology was still built on Flow. It's still Web3 technology, just very abstracted in the interest of user experience. The trade-off there is that you have a walled garden, basically, right? Your users can only do with those assets what you allow them to. And so account linking, what it does is kind of solves that mainstream onboarding problem where you want to onboard users very quick, at a high activation rate, right? You don't want, if you're making the trade-off between a custodial application with known onboarding patterns, you're going to run into the problem where you run into a walled garden. Go for it. Yeah.
What I'd say is, because I did some time on the Dapper side, and we experienced this ourselves when we did CryptoKitties, where what Gio's saying right here, and this is why I wanted to jump in, we had a bunch of people excited for CryptoKitties, and then as soon as we were download MetaMask, they were I don't know, and we lost 10,000, 100,000 people that were interested. Then it was remember the seed phrase, and then another 100,000 people started being interested, etc. So Dapper Wallet launched, like Gio's talking about, but then the Dapper Wallet issue they had, and Dapper Wallet team, don't be mad at me for saying this, was that then they had all these users now in just their ecosystem. And they were well, now it's this walled garden, and account linking is okay, you've got a wallet here that has nothing to do with Dapper Wallet, it's completely self-custodial. You can link it to your Dapper Wallet. You can control your assets in this DApp custody wallet of Dapper Wallet from a self-custody wallet, which when you think about it, it unlocks so much potential. But then to your point around even established power users, they can start having a whole new world of hot wallets and cold wallets. Imagine if you could have a cold wallet that never connects to anything, but can manage all your assets in a parent-child one-way relationship. So I can sit here, and I'll use an ETH example, even though maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves. I've got my Bored Apes in the ETH wallet, right? And I go to their Discord, and they want me to connect to Collabland, and then verify my assets. But I don't want to click anything with this wallet. Instead, I want to use this wallet over here, which is account linked to it, connect to Collabland. Collabland can see that this is connected via account link into my main wallet and verify my assets via this wallet, even though they're held in this wallet. Now, obviously, that's not currently possible in EVM. Don't get nervous. I'm not saying that'll be ready right away, but that's the sort of features that we're bringing to the ecosystem. So even your established users can have a more secure experience. You just got to build that.
So I think we're gonna wrap up here, and I just want to give you kind of an open question: is what do you wish people understood more about Flow, Dapper Labs, Flow EVM, anything like that?
I'll let you handle Flow EVM. I think for Dapper Labs, again, I work on Flow now, so this may be a little bit outdated, but I wish people understand how much Dapper Labs' vision for the future of Web3 is just that it's every day. Like the decisions and things that Dapper Labs do in terms of building collectible platforms, and even originally building Flow before it spun off, right, was all about the 10 years future. It's about 15 years down the line. It's about when everyone is already in Web3, and then what do we do? And I'm not saying, and they're obviously building good onboarding, but their current focus is more that mindset of, this is going to take over the world, how do we prepare for that? On the Flow side, it's a similar mindset, but we're more focused on how do we get devs into the ecosystem. If we know that crypto in general is going to be where everyone wants to live and use technology, how do we make it easy for devs? You know what I mean? And EVM equivalents, bringing that cross-chain is only one step of that. Once we have all the networks able to talk to each other, we still got a lot of work to do, but I do believe that we on the Flow Foundation are kind of leading the charge there. Like the things and the sort of discussions that Flow engineers like Gio are having are the sort of discussions that are like, okay, what happens when we're successful? I'll give you one last example just for people to think about. Very few people are talking about what do we do if you have 50,000 NFTs in your wallet? How do you manage your collection? But if we want mainstream success, we have to imagine a world where that happens. And so those sort of challenges are the sort of things we think about and talk about, but I don't see enough people talking about in general. So I wish more people would have that mindset personally.
Yeah.
For EVM?
Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, for EVM, well, they're probably inspired by Alex Henschel's worked on the protocol and the architecture for Flow. And so, in conversations with him while I've been at ETH Denver, I've really come to appreciate the fact that this modular architecture for a blockchain with proposer-builder separation is basically the vision that it seems is being played out by Ethereum and is being realized. But what I would like people to understand is that's actually implemented, that's available on Flow. And so by building on Flow EVM, you're able to benefit from not just all the awesome features that Luke is talking about on the user end, but also the base protocol benefits, where you have extremely inexpensive transactions, storage, and 15-second finality times. So for the technically minded folks, those are major hit points that are really important to have.
Okay. So a really bright future for Flow.
We hope so. I mean, for Web3 at large, that's why we're here. We believe in Web3 as the future, and we just want to help build it,
Always think long term, right? So, thank you very much for joining us, guys. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.